Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are attempting to solve, well, maybe not solve, but certainly unpack one of the great creative paradoxes in modern entertainment.
Yeah, we're diving into the wonderfully confusing, definitely multifaceted career of Timothy Richard Heidecker.
Born in Allentown, Pennsylvania back in 1976. And usually, when you hear Heidecker's name, the first thing people think is, oh, the Tim and Eric guy, right? Half of that comedy duo.
Exactly. But if you actually look closer, really dig into his body of work since, the mid-90s, comedian, writer, director, actor, podcaster, musician, that simple description just doesn't cut it.
Not even close.
We're talking about a true kind of restless, creative polymath here.
And that's the core puzzle, really, that we want to explore for you, the listener. You might know him from that deeply surreal, often, let's be honest, uncomfortably cringe-inducing comedy that basically defined a whole era of Adult Swim.
Right, the stuff that made you squirm but you couldn't look away.
Yeah. But what happens when that same person, that same creative force, then turns around and moves into, earnest folk music or serious political activism or lands these roles in prestige independent films?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So our mission today is to take this, stack of sources detailing his entire trajectory, his whole path, and really unpack how he manages this extraordinary artistic tightrope walk.
It's like he's living on both ends of the spectrum at once.
That's exactly it. We'll show how Heidecker consistently operates simultaneously at these two extreme ends. You've got the pure, almost performance art absurdity on one side, and then genuine, sometimes painfully sincere work on the other. And the trick, or what we're sort of discovering as we look through this, is that for him, that ironic persona, it's often just another tool.
A tool for what, though?
For social critique, for commentary. It's all part of the package, just different facets.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, where this whole universe kind of began, the foundation, that creative partnership between Timothy Heidecker and Eric Wareheim.
Right. It really started as a college collaboration, didn't it? But it's solidified into this incredibly distinct voice very quickly.
Tell us about those origins. Where did it kick off?
Well, it truly began on the East Coast. Heidecker, as you said, grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, went to Allentown Central Catholic High School, so he's got that specific sort of regional sensibility baked in.
Okay.
But his creative life really ignited when he enrolled at Temple University in Philadelphia. That's the crucial place. That's where he connected with Eric Wareheim.
And this wasn't just, bumping into each other in the hallway.
No. The sources make it clear this was the start of a professional partnership. A really intense one that's basically remained active and creatively evolving from 1996 right up to today.
Wow, nearly 3 decades. That's rare, especially in comedy.
It really is. Sustained, sometimes apparently quite painful collaboration.
Oh, yeah.
Comedy partnerships often burn out, but this one has endured and, frankly, kept changing.
And the style they developed together, it just immediately stood out, didn't it? Defined by, low production values, real discomfort, and what we now just call cringe.
Oh, absolutely. And their first major breakthrough project really embodies that. Tom Goes to the Mayor. That ran from 2004 to 2006.
Right. Tom Goes to the Mayor. Explain that format, because it was unique.
Unique is putting it mildly. It wasn't just low budget. It was a whole conceptual statement. The sources describe it as limited animation. What that actually means is they used live action footage, but then heavily manipulated it, photocopied, crudely cut into still images, basic movements.
Yeah, I remember that look. Almost like a living, breathing, slightly horrifying Xerox copy.
Exactly. The effect was deliberately cheap, definitely unsettling, and it perfectly matched the show's, pretty bleak, bureaucratic premise.
That visual style felt just as important as the jokes, didn't it? It kind of amplified that sense of existential dread that ran underneath everything.
Totally. You had Tom, played by Heidecker, always coming up with these, well-meaning but fundamentally flawed ideas. He'd bring them to the mayor, played by Wareheim.
And the mayor. Oh, man.
The mayor would inevitably, and often just cruelly, derail Tom's life plans. It felt like watching this small-town guy just drowning in bad ideas, and even worse, local government infrastructure.
Like a perfect little microcosm of, bureaucracy, incompetence, maybe that kind of unfulfilled American optimism, all filtered through this really strange, melted graphic style.
That's a great way to put it. And what's fascinating here, especially for understanding their drive, is how they got the show made. They weren't just, waiting for network meetings.
No, they took a much more direct route, almost punk rock in a way.
Precisely. And the key figure here, according to the sources, is Bob Odenkirk. He eventually became the executive producer.
The Bob Odenkirk Saul Goodman, Mr. Show?
That's the one. Apparently, Heidecker and Wareheim literally just mailed copies of an early version of the show directly to Odenkirk. Unsolicited.
Wow, just cold mailed him.
Yeah, that level of, like, grassroots hustle, just sending your weird show to a major industry figure, it shows how committed they were right from the start. And Odenkirk, already a comedy titan, from Mr. Show, he recognized the unique genius in it.
He must have seen something really special.
He did. He signed on as executive producer and, crucially, helped sell the project to Adult Swim. That endorsement, that belief from someone like Odenkirk was the real launchpad.
And that launchpad led them pretty much directly to, arguably, their magnum opus of absurdity. Tim and Eric, awesome show. Great job.
Yes. Awesome show.
This show, premiering in 2007, running through 2010, it basically cemented them as the absolute masters of surrealist public access television parody, didn't it?
It really did. An Awesome Show was a massive stylistic leap from Tom Goes to the Mayor. It moved beyond that limited animation thing and just exploded into this sprawling, manic sketch show.
They did everything on it.
Pretty much. They created, wrote, and starred in this huge gallery of bizarre characters. For anyone listening who hasn't seen it, well, the sources make it really clear that the humor thrives on intentional awkwardness.
Oh, yeah. Maximum awkwardness.
Gross-out visual gags, deliberately bad editing, terrible special effects. It was a complete rejection of polished mainstream comedy. Think about recurring bits like Cinco.
Oh, Cinco. The corporation selling those completely bizarre, useless, often genuinely dangerous products.
Right. Like the My New Pep or the Tiered, or unsettling characters like Spadgett. The guy who just pops out and surprises people, sometimes gets them with spaghetti.
Spadgett, yeah, just shouting his name. It wasn't just funny, though, was it? It often felt genuinely disturbing.
Definitely. It really challenged the viewer. You were constantly asking, is this supposed to be art? Is this just a mistake? Am I having some kind of neurological event watching this?
It was a calculated discomfort, for sure. And that's what gave them such a huge cult following.
And this commitment to that sort of anti-art ethos, it quickly branched out beyond TV sketches. They leveraged the show's success to make Tim and Eric's billion-dollar movie in 2012.
Ah, the movie. How does that translate?
Well, it was basically an extension of their aesthetic onto the big screen. Heidecker wasn't just starring. He wrote, directed, and produced it. It was, in essence, a parody of the whole Hollywood vanity project idea.
Complete with disastrous financial outcomes in the plot.
Right.
And just truly bizarre storylines.
Exactly. So if Awesome Show was this kind of hyper-edited maximalist chaos, where did they go next? Because they didn't just stop there.
Right. What came after the movie?
They pivoted again. They went into this more contained, much darker universe with Tim and Eric's bedtime stories.
Bedtime stories, yeah. That felt different.
It really did. It was an anthology horror series, ran from 2013 to 2017. It traded that frenetic sketch structure for something, well, darker, more contained, almost Lynchian in feel sometimes.
Like little unsettling nightmares.
Exactly. A series of genuinely unsettling, often quite horrifying vignettes. And this really showed their ability to adapt their core aesthetic to a more serious narrative structure, even if the narratives themselves were still completely bizarre.
And they even circled back briefly to pure sitcom structure, didn't they?
Yeah.
With Beef House in 2020. Almost like parodying the very genre they'd spent a decade dismantling.
They're just relentlessly committed to satirizing basically every existing TV format, it seems. And their collaborations, they weren't just restricted to their main shows either.
Right, they popped up elsewhere, too.
Yeah, their reach into the whole alternative comedy scene is huge. You see them appearing in things like The Young Person's Guide to History special, playing debt collectors, I think.
Yeah.
And even a guest spot in the movie Let's Go to Prison. But maybe more importantly, they became kind of industry curators, didn't they?
You mean with Jash?
Exactly. Alongside Sarah Silverman, Michael Cera, and Reggie Watts, all these significant, really unique voices in their own right, they co-created the YouTube channel Jash.
That felt like a big deal at the time.
It was. It wasn't just another content outlet. It really solidified them as foundational figures in that burgeoning digital alternative comedy space. They were using their established brand, their Tim and Ericness, to lift up other weird, interesting voices.
So it's safe to say, by the time we hit the mid-2010s, they'd pretty much mastered that short-form, high-cringe, absurdist sketch world.
Absolutely. But once that was mastered, well, that seems to be when Heidecker realized he could commit to a single character, but make it much longer, even more painfully layered.
Okay, that's a perfect transition. Because once that Tim and Eric universe provided the bedrock, Heidecker launched what might be his defining solo project. one that really elevates parody into this exhausting, years-long form of performance art.
You have to be talking about the on-cinema at the cinema universe.
Exactly. This is where the comedy starts to really blur lines, merging with deep cultural commentary, political stuff. Tell us about this beast. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And On Cinema is just extraordinary because of the sheer commitment. It's a commitment to a single evolving joke that has now spanned over a decade, kicking off back in 2012.
And how did it start? Pretty simply, right?
Yeah, it began, innocently enough, just a parodic web series, then a podcast supposedly about film review. But it quickly morphed into this sprawling, completely self-contained fictional universe.
And what's it really about? Because it's not really about movies.
Not at all. It became this platform for critiquing things like media literacy or the lack thereof, unqualified punditry, political polarization, all filtered through these two characters.
The characters. The genius of it really lies in that central tension, doesn't it? You've got the character Tim Heidecker.
Right, who becomes increasingly arrogant, completely obsessed with his own bizarre health fads, politically agitated, often sort of violently nationalist.
And yet completely, utterly unqualified to review films. He barely seems to watch them.
He really doesn't. And he's constantly warring with his quote-unquote guest star, Greg Turkington.
Playing Greg Turkington, the film buff.
Yes, who plays this incredibly pedantic, detail-obsessed movie buff. But his idea of film criticism is like knowing the exact runtime and maybe the aspect ratio of The Hobbit.
Or cataloging his massive VHS collection.
Precisely. And their total inability to ever effectively review a movie or frankly even hold a polite conversation, that's the core humor. It's like this horrifying study in two incompatible American egos just trapped in a room, broadcast to the world.
It feels like such a profound critique of the internet age, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The Tim Heidecker character seems to embody all the worst aspects of the modern media personality.
Oh, absolutely. Loud, completely confidently wrong about everything, easily influenced by conspiracy theories, totally incapable of listening to anyone else.
It's chillingly accurate sometimes.
It is. But it's more than just a critique. It's the sustained immersion. The commitment is what truly sets it apart from just a sketch. They didn't just do the podcast.
No, they went way beyond that.
They created the On Cinema Film Guide app back in 2013. And get this, it features their voices, in character, supposedly reviewing over 17,000 films.
17,000? That's insane.
Imagine the sheer painstaking labor involved in cataloging that many films, probably writing terrible, short, useless reviews for them purely for the sake of this joke about incompetence.
That definitely elevates it from just sketch comedy to something more like conceptual art.
Yeah, or maybe endurance art for them and the audience. And the universe just kept expanding aggressively. It spilled out into like real-world legal drama within the narrative.
A whole Electric Sun Desert Music Festival trial.
Exactly. The fictional character Tim Heidecker went through this highly publicized murder trial for which he was naturally acquitted in the show's reality. And then what does he do? He decides to run for district attorney in San Bernardino County, California.
Which led to the movie Mr. America.
Right. The 2019 feature film Mr. America. Heidecker wrote and produced it, and it follows his character's pathetic, completely narcissistic campaign. This blending of the fictional narrative with the actual reality of producing a feature film, it just further solidified the whole universe as this complex, self-aware piece of metamedia.
You're constantly forced, as the audience, to question that boundary.
Right.
Where does the actor end and the character begin?
Constantly. And speaking of self-aware, he launched another long-running project around the same time, but with a different vibe. Office Hours Live with Tim Heidecker.
Okay, so how does Office Hours differ from the, very structured and often heavily scripted world of On Cinema?
Well, Office Hours Live, which started in 2016 and is co-hosted with DJ Doug Pound and Vic Berger key collaborators, it shifts away from that fixed character persona of Tim Heidecker.
So it's more
him.
It seems closer to him, yes.
Oh.
While it's still definitely improvised and comedic, it feels much more immediately responsive to current events. It's basically a weekly call-in show, podcast, web series.
All of the above. Yeah. And they feature phone calls, video calls with fans, other comedians, musicians, and sometimes, quite serious political commentators.
So it's less about inhabiting this one specific awful character and more about using his own comedic lens to kind of filter the chaotic real world as it's happening.
Exactly. It gives him a different avenue for his, very quick-witted, often politically charged perspective, but more directly because it's live, takes calls, the energy is much more chaotic, spontaneous.
Right.
It allows him to use parody and a sense of humor as a tool for maybe real-time agitation or commentary, rather than that long-form character study we see in cinema. It just shows his versatility, using different platforms for different kinds of critique.
And then, sticking with solo comedy, we absolutely have to talk about that specific stand-up special that just completely deconstructed the whole medium. An Evening with Tim Heidecker from 2020.
Oh, wow. That's special.
This felt like metacomedy reaching its absolute peak. It really forces the audience to grapple with the meaning of performance itself, doesn't it?
Completely. If you tuned into that special on YouTube expecting, traditional jokes, setup, punchline, you were immediately just thrown off balance.
Totally disoriented.
The entire intent, as the sources explain it, was a deliberate, full-on parody of the typical stand-up format. Heidecker is playing the ultimate hack stand-up comic.
Just the worst possible version.
Yeah, a character who is breathtakingly incompetent. He's relying on painfully outdated material, terrible impressions, this overly self-assured stage presence that just completely fails to land a single punchline. It's painful.
The comedy is actually achieved through the total abject failure of the performance itself. It's like it asks the viewer, what are your baseline expectations for entertainment? Okay, here's the absolute opposite of that. Enjoy the discomfort.
The discomfort is the punchline. It's an exhausting watch, honestly, but it's kind of brilliant in its conception. It's a critique of the whole stand-up industrial complex, maybe.
Yeah, and that sort of self-help guru thing some comics lean into.
Right. And just the mediocrity that often gets rewarded. It's a really my concept piece that demands the audience be in on the joke that there is no actual joke being told on stage. The joke is the performance of the bad comedian.
It's clear this directorial eye, this knack for parody, extends beyond just his own projects, too. He's successfully injected this aesthetic into major advertising campaigns, which is kind of wild.
Absolutely. He clearly has the sophisticated understanding of different media formats and how to subvert them, even for commercial purposes. Like, he collaborated with Zach Galifianakis on that series of short films for Absolute Vodka's website.
Right, I remember those.
Proving he could work within that branded content space with other established mainstream comedians. And crucially, with Wareheim, he directed that highly memorable series of Old Spice commercials, the ones starring Terry Crews.
Oh, yeah. The hyper-intense exploding ones.
Exactly. Those commercials perfectly utilize the Tim and Eric aesthetic. The abrupt cuts, the hyper-masculine absurdity cranked way up, that sense of digital surrealism.
And they were huge.
They were huge. It proved their bizarre style could actually sell deodorant, which speaks volumes, really, about their ability to manage that absurdity while still meeting, corporate objectives. That's a tricky balance.
Okay, so here's where that split identity we talked about becomes truly, almost jarringly apparent. Because while Heidecker was busy perfecting this persona of the incompetent, often disgusting, maybe morally bankrupt character in his own comedy universes.
Right, the hack comedian, the terrible pundit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was simultaneously, almost quietly, carving out this whole parallel career as a serious character actor. How does the guy who co-wrote a film literally called Tim and Eric's billion-dollar movie suddenly turn up in, like, the most talked-about independent drama of the year?
It's a huge question. Did the audience even buy it? Could they separate the two?
Yeah.
And that is the central shock, I think, when you look at his filmography outside of the Tim and Eric bubble. He had to somehow convince people to take him seriously as an actor, completely divorced from that established, very specific comedic sensibility. And the sources suggest he largely succeeded.
So we see him transition pretty smoothly, actually, into supporting roles in some massive studio films.
Definitely. Let's look at some of the big ones. He was in Bridesmaids back in 2011.
Right, Dougie.
Playing Dougie, yeah. Which was, a pivotal moment in modern mainstream comedy itself. And it was a straight comedy role, but one that required him to fit comfortably into a traditional studio production framework. No weird editing allowed.
And he didn't stop there. He's even in the MCU.
He is. He has credits in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He appeared as Captain Daniel Goobler in Ant-Man and the Wasp in 2018.
Captain Goobler.
Yeah.
I mean, even the name sounds like it belongs in an awesome show sketch.
Right. And yet the context is entirely mainstream Marvel blockbuster. That ability to just embody both extremes, sometimes simultaneously, it seems like his superpower.
It really is.
And further cementing those mainstream credentials, he took on a pretty significant role in Jordan Peele's acclaimed horror film, Us, in 2019.
Oh, yeah. He played Josh Tyler and then the tethered version, Tex. That was a serious role in a serious film.
Absolutely. And these roles, Bridesmaids, Ant-Man, Us, they confirm that he possesses the range and, frankly, the discipline required by major directors, operating far outside the self-directed chaos of his own sketch work.
But the true pivot point, maybe, the role that really demanded the most from him dramatically, surely has to be that 2012 independent film, The Comedy.
Oh, absolutely. The Comedy, directed by Rick Alverson. That film is something else. It's punishing, it's challenging, it's almost the anti-comedy film, despite the title.
And it starred Heidecker alongside Wareheim, right? But not as Tim and Eric.
Not at all. Heidecker plays the lead, Swanson. He's this guy in his 30s drifting through life on inherited wealth in Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Desperately privileged, immensely bored, and just deeply, profoundly cynical.
Sounds unpleasant.
Oh, he's incredibly unlikable. He spends the entire movie engaging in these cruel, boundary-pushing pranks and just generally emotionally vacuous behavior, all while sort of waiting for his rich, ailing father to die.
Wow. That's a massive leap from playing, a cartoon version of an unlikable character on Adult Swim. This sounds like it required real dramatic depth.
It absolutely required genuine dramatic chops. And the film was lauded not because it was funny, because it really isn't in a traditional sense, but because Heidecker delivered this performance that felt unsettlingly authentic.
Critics bought it then.
They did. They praised his ability to just embody this entitled emptiness, this spiritual void. The consensus seemed to be that his background in cringe comedy actually gave him this unique insight into social awkwardness, into cruelty, which he could then translate very effectively into serious drama.
So The Comedy really proved definitively that Timothy Heidecker wasn't just a comedian playing variations of himself. He was a capable, serious, dramatic performer.
Exactly. A game changer for perceptions of him as an actor. And his television roles, beyond the Tim and Eric stuff, also showed this incredible range. He seems comfortable doing voice work, live action across pretty much every conceivable genre.
Let's touch on the voice work first.
Sure. On the voice side, his contributions are pretty impressive. He's been on Aqua Teen Hunger Force multiple times, I think. He voiced a character named Amos Bruce on The Simpsons.
On Simpsons, okay.
And he's had several different roles across, I think the sources know, 4 episodes of Bob's Burgers, including the character Bert Delucci. These are high-profile, well-respected animated shows that require strong comedic timing and character work, not just doing a bizarre voice.
Right, it's about fitting into those established worlds. And then in live-action TV, he's been popping up in all sorts of prestige and cult comedies for years now.
He really has. We see him as Reverend Troy in Workaholics. He had a recurring, pretty significant role as Gene across 8 episodes of HBO's Eastbound and Down.
He was great in that.
Yeah, holding his own opposite Danny McBride. And more recently, he played Doug in the HBO Max hit Our Flag Means Death.
Okay, so he's comfortable in these ensemble casts.
Yep.
And his most recent series roles seem to demonstrate he's still keeping pace with the most cutting-edge, high-concept comedy out there.
Definitely. Look at his work in Killing It, the Peacock series with Craig Robinson. He had a significant role there as Rodney LaMonka across 10 episodes, really showcasing his ability to handle season-long narrative structure within a comedic framework.
And of course, I Think You Should Leave.
Yes. He's a recurring performer in, I believe, 3 episodes so far of the sketch comedy phenomenon. I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson.
Which feels like the current torchbearer for that kind of uncomfortable, high-stakes character comedy he helped pioneer.
Exactly. And Heidecker fits seamlessly into that chaotic world. It just proves his particular style and sensibility remain relevant and adaptable, even as the comedy landscape evolves.
We should also probably connect this acting and directing mastery back to critical recognition, too. It's not just that he's doing all this stuff. The industry is actually recognizing his versatility, particularly behind the camera as well.
That's a vital piece of context, yeah. He received a Directors Guild of America Awards nomination, a DGA nomination, which he shared with Wareheim. It was for outstanding directorial achievement in commercials.
For which commercial?
For that Cerave campaign they did, the one featuring Michael Cera playing on the name Similarity, Michael Cerave.
Ah, right. That was clever.
And getting a DGA nomination is a major institutional nod. It recognizes that their unique directorial vision is not just weird, but technically and commercially proficient. They know how to make stuff that works on a professional level.
And he's won awards for acting, too.
Well, he holds a Webby Award for Best Actor, specifically as part of the comedy team of Tim and Eric. So, yeah, He has mastered and been recognized for performing, writing, and directing across this entire media ecosystem. It's quite the resume.
Okay, let's shift gears dramatically again, because the music career, feels like the ultimate crucible for that whole question of irony versus sincerity we keep coming back to.
It really does.
Because while he was deep in creating the madness of Awesome Show and building the on-cinema universe, he simultaneously launched this whole other career in music. And that music sometimes was the purest, most absurd comedy, but ultimately, it seems to have become a vehicle for genuine, unironic emotion.
Yeah, the sources point to 8 solo studio albums, plus collaborations. And they explicitly describe this trajectory as blending comedy rock initially, but moving steadily toward more earnest folk rock.
So where did the music career actually start? Did it grow out of the comedy?
Interestingly, it started in a place that sounds like pure shared musical admiration, not parody. The first major collaboration was Heidecker and Wood.
What, to use wood?
That's Davin Wood. And significantly, he had already provided music composition for both Tom Goes to the Mayor and Awesome Show, so they had a working relationship grounded in music for the shows.
Ah, okay. So they bonded over music first.
Yeah.
And what kind of music were they making together as Heidecker and Wood?
Well, their stated musical goal, according to the sources, was an earnest homage, not a parody specifically of 1970s soft rock.
70s soft rock.
Yeah, they cited specific influences. People like Randy Newman, Warren Zevon, Harry Nilsson, Boz Scaggs, classic songwriters known for lyrical wit, sometimes biting, but generally sincere musical delivery.
That's a very specific niche to aim for.
It is. And they released 2 albums in this vein. Starting from Nowhere came out in 2011, and then Some Things Never Stay the Same followed in 2013.
And what did those albums show? Could he actually pull off sincere soft rock?
Apparently, yes. These albums showed an early capacity for genuine creation within that specific musical genre. Reviewers noted there's warmth, there's definitely observational humor in the lyrics, but there's often a real non-ironic depth to the composition and the performance. It felt like a space where the irony could finally take a break for him.
But, knowing Heidecker, that rest probably couldn't last too long, right? Because the other side of his musical coin is, well, it's the Yellow River Boys.
Ah, yes, the Yellow River Boys. A project that is just iconic for its utter commitment to absurdity and, frankly, cultural trolling.
Tell us about this, because it feels like the polar opposite of earnest Harry Nilsson homages.
It absolutely is. Under this specific band name, Heidecker released an album called Urinal Saint Station in 2013. It came out on Drag City, a respected indie label, which adds another layer of weirdness.
Urinal Saint Station, okay.
Yeah. The band name, the album title, and especially the lead single, which was called Hot Piss.
Oh my.
It all deliberately pushes the boundaries of taste and decency as far as possible. The music itself is described as lo-fi, deliberately offensive rock, just crude and confrontational.
And the critical reaction to this masterpiece.
Yeah.
That's where the meta joke really lands, isn't it?
It's the ultimate meta joke. In a truly surreal twist of critical appreciation or perhaps misunderstanding or maybe just leaning into the provocation Vice magazine, a publication known for its sometimes contrarian, often provocative aesthetic.
Right.
They named Urinal Saint Station the best album of 2013.
The best album of the year. Ahead of, actual musicians.
Yep. The best album. So this wasn't just some guy releasing a strange, offensive album. It was pure performance art designed to test the absolute limits of music criticism, the media's appetite for shock value, maybe even the concept of best.
The comedy isn't just in the gross-out lyrics, then. It's in the serious discussion that followed about its supposed artistic merit.
Exactly. That's the real punchline. But his musical satire wasn't limited to just shock rock. He's also proven he can execute incredibly high-level, very specific political parody through music.
Okay, where did that come in?
That brings us to Cane'thology, Songs in the Key of Cain. This is from 2012.
Cane'thology.
Yeah.
As in Herman Cain.
Precisely. This album was born out of that parody campaign jingle, Cain Train, that Heidecker created when Herman Cain was running for president.
I remember Cain Train. It was catchy.
It was weirdly catchy, but the full album project was just meticulously detailed as a joke. The layers of commitment are what make it genius, though. It featured 9 songs in total.
Okay.
And the original price was listed at $9.99.
Wait. 999, as in?
As in Herman Cain's infamous 9999 tax plan. Every detail, from the number of tracks to the pricing, was part of the joke. It demonstrates this almost surgical level of commitment to political satire. He really sweats the small stuff to make the parody land perfectly.
But was it purely a joke, or was there something else going on?
Well, crucially, And this is a recurring theme we see in Heidecker's work. The sources confirm that the actual proceeds from the album went to benefit the Violence Intervention Program.
Ah, okay. So there's substance behind the silliness.
Exactly. He often inserts a serious, sometimes altruistic cause behind the most ludicrous artistic statement. It forces the audience, maybe, to engage with the real-world political or social context simmering beneath the humor.
He even used his musical knowledge to do incredibly specific musical impressions, right?
Oh.
Particularly targeting Bob Dylan.
Oh, his Dylan spoofs are just a masterclass in musical mimicry and deep-cut referencing. It shows he's not just kidding around. He knows his music history.
What are some examples?
Well, remember when news broke that Bob Dylan's upcoming album, Tempest, was going to feature this epic 14-minute track about the sinking of the RMS Titanic?
Vaguely, yeah.
Heidecker almost immediately put out his own competing Dylan-esque pastiche track, also called Titanic, trying to beat Dylan to the punch with his own version.
That's brilliant and incredibly niche.
Totally. And he followed that up in 2013 with other tracks, like one called Running Out the Clock, which specifically parodied the sound and the lyrical style of Dylan's 1983 album Infidels.
Wow, Infidels. That's a deep cut for parody.
Right. And another called Long Black Dress, which was crafted specifically in the style of Dylan's actual Tempest album. This just demonstrates that his musical skills are genuinely professional grade. He's not just goofing around on a guitar, he's clearly studying composition, arrangement, vocal delivery.
Okay, so he can do homage, he can do shock parody, he can do political satire, he can do specific artist pastiche. But the solo discography, the albums under his own name, that's where we see the clearest trajectory toward the, well, earnest folk rocker we seem to have today.
The shift becomes really unmistakable there. You see the political energy channeled much more directly, rather than through elaborate parody, like with Too Dumb for Suicide, Tim Heidecker's Trump songs.
Right, that title is pretty direct.
And the timing was key. It was released in 2017, exactly 1 year after Donald Trump's 2016 presidential victory. This wasn't subtle satire. This was music designed to channel specific, immediate political anxieties and frustrations. It felt like an authentic emotional response set to music.
And then he seemed to embrace high-concept existentialism.
Yeah.
Almost completely abandoning comedy, with 2020 album Fear of Death.
Yeah, Fear of Death was a full-on concept album. The whole thing focused on mortality, aging, existence. Pretty heavy stuff.
And he brought in some serious collaborators for that one, didn't he?
He did. It featured high-profile indie musicians. Members of bands like Foxygen, the Lemon Twigs, and the singer Wise Blood contributed. The seriousness of the subject matter, combined with the caliber of the musical talent involved, it made it pretty clear this wasn't a joke.
This wasn't Urinal Sensation.
Definitely not. This wasn't a parody. It was presented as a genuine artistic exploration of profound human fear. He had successfully, it seems, crossed the line into the indie folk scene as a serious musician in his own right.
Which brings us right up to his most recent and maybe most contextually significant release, the 2024 album Slipping Away.
Right, and the sources really confirm this album's importance by noting the explicit shift in his own artistic statements surrounding it. Heidecker himself apparently admitted that much of his prior artistic life has revolved around obscuring identity and irony.
He said that himself.
Yeah, and Slipping Away is noted, both by critics and seemingly by him, as a deliberate and definitive move away from that practice. It's being framed as his mature phase, prioritizing clarity, sincerity, and direct emotion in his folk music.
So he's explicitly saying he's shedding that shield of irony, the one that defined pretty much his entire prior career.
That seems to be the message, yes. Whether it sticks, well, that remains to be seen.
Okay, so we have this picture of a man who built an empire based on ironic distance, on performance, yet who increasingly seems to be using sincerity as a primary creative tool. To help ground ourselves in the actual person behind all these multiple layers of performance, maybe we should quickly establish some of his personal context.
That's probably useful, yeah. Just the basic facts. On the personal front, Timothy Heidecker is married to the actress Marilyn Porayko. They got married back in 2007.
Okay, so a long-term relationship.
Seems so. And they have a family. They have 2 children, a daughter who was born in 2013 and a son born in 2016.
Right. And those kinds of domestic details, having a family, maybe they offer some crucial context for that observant, sometimes kind of melancholy tone you hear in his more recent earnest folk music.
Absolutely. A lot of those later songs seem to deal directly with themes of family, aging, suburban life, responsibility, things that become more central as you get older and have kids. It makes sense.
And while his most famous comedy character, Tim Heidecker from On Cinema, is this sort of bizarre political agitator, often leaning far right.
Yeah.
The actual man, Timothy Heidecker, maintains very clear and very different political and philosophical stances.
Yes, the lines are quite sharp here based on the sources. Politically, in June 2018, Timothy Heidecker publicly announced that he had joined the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA.
Okay, so DSA membership, that definitely clarifies things.
It does, and that affiliation helps explain the specific, often quite directed political satire he executes in his music, and particularly on shows like Office Hours Live. It stands in really stark contrast to the confused, conspiracy-laden, vaguely right-wing politics of his on-cinema character persona.
So the character's one thing, the person is another. And philosophically?
Philosophically, he has publicly described himself, interestingly, as both an atheist and an agnostic, which suggests maybe a comfort with uncertainty.
Perhaps. It certainly seems to inform those existential themes, right? Mortality, the meaning of existence that we see explored so directly in albums like Fear of Death.
Definitely feels connected. Finally, maybe we should just briefly mention his literary output, because of course he's written books too.
Right. Do they shed more light, or mostly just expand the fictional universes?
Mostly the latter, it seems. His bibliography kind of reinforces the idea that his projects just bleed into every possible medium. He co-authored a book called Bicycle Built for Two back in 2010 with his on-cinema co-star Greg Turkington.
Okay, so an on-cinema book.
Yeah, further cementing the fictional lore of their characters and their bizarre relationship. And then, of course, there's Tim and Eric's Zone Theory from 2015, which he co-authored with Eric Wareheim.
What was Zone Theory about?
It acts as a kind of fictionalized self-help guidebook, supposedly explaining the philosophy and the aesthetic world behind their specific brand of anti-comedy. Very meta, very self-referential.
Naturally. So these books really just prove that, for Heidecker, the work is never quite done, is it? The joke or the concept always seems to demand a new format, another layer.
Always another layer. Hashtag tag outro.
So after diving through all of this, what does it all mean for you, the listener? Our deep dive today really reveals, I think, that Timothy Richard Heidecker's career is far more than just a collection of random, weird projects strung together.
Yeah, it's not random at all.
No, it feels like a purposeful, decades-long study in artistic contradiction. He's constantly using parody, music, acting, all these different tools to continuously challenge the audience's perception of authenticity, of performance, especially in our weird 21st century media landscape.
And the sourcing really confirms he's a master of compartmentalization, doesn't it? He can release the extreme, almost juvenile absurdity of the Yellow River Boys, featuring the lead single Hot Piss.
I forget Hot Piss.
While simultaneously writing these incredibly emotionally structured, quite beautiful folk songs about the fragility of life on an album like Fear of Death. He operates with completely different sets of rules depending on the medium he's in.
And that forces you, as the consumer, as the audience member, to constantly recalibrate your expectations based on which Kim is speaking at that moment. Is it the character? Is it the musician? Is it the comedian?
Right. And his diverse resume just highlights this. Think about it. Playing the cruel, privileged, deeply unhappy lead in a serious, dramatic film like The Comedy. Then turning around and directing major commercial campaigns for deodorant. Then getting involved in serious political organization with the DSA. And then going back to playing the aggressively incompetent, conspiracy-addled pundit on cinema.
It's all connected somehow.
It feels like it is. Each project seems to use a specific persona, whether it's Tim the filmmaker, Tim the earnest musician, Tim the political agitator to explore social anxieties. Sometimes he does it through the lens of absurd, distancing comedy, and sometimes through genuine, immediate introspection.
He has just brilliantly managed these multiple, often wildly conflicting identities for years. And this brings us right back to that recent statement he made.
Yeah, the one about his artistic life being defined by obscuring his identity and relying on irony.
Right. And that his most recent album, Slipping Away, marks an intentional shift away from that. He's explicitly stating, it seems, that the mask is coming off. The sincerity is taking over.
Which, given his entire history, that statement itself feels like a setup, doesn't it?
It totally does. And that raises the ultimate provocative question for you, our listener, to really consider. If Timothy Richard Heidecker has explicitly stated he is moving away from the obscuring power of irony and towards sincerity, what artistic project, whether it's comedy or music or something totally new, will he inevitably release next that completely subverts this newfound earnestness? that violently pulls the mask of authenticity right back down and reminds us all that he is still and perhaps always will be the master of creative contradiction.
That is the ultimate creative challenge he seems to have set for himself now, isn't it? What's the counter move going to be?
Exactly. Something for you to ponder as you listen to his next album or watch his next inevitably chaotic web series.
Indeed. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.